Welcome to Wildside, your wild true crime podcast.
We're your hosts, who are sisters, storytellers, and truth seekers.
I'm Bailey, a therapist who is fascinated by all weird and dark human behaviors.
And I'm Chelsea, an educator here to unearth the facts behind the cases.
We cover true crime because some cases are just too dark to forget,
and others are too wild to ignore.
We're so glad you're here, so buckle up
and enjoy the ride.
Happy Wednesday.
I love Wednesday.
And what I love even more is Shortsides. Shortsides is my favorite.
I love Shortsides. I just love them.
Chelsea and I have considered changing Wildside to like literally just Shortsides because we love them so much. What do you guys think about that? Comment on our Instagram, our Facebook page, Spotify, whatever. Let us know. Would you like having just Shortsides, or would you want something like what we got going now?
I would not oppose to do Shortsides. That's my vote. Right? I kind of love it. Well, today, you guys, we are talking about curses. And it always makes me think of Benny from The Mummy when he was like, the curse, beware of the curse. Look who has the horses. Look who's on the wrong side
of the river. Yeah. My favorite movie in the history of ever. Okay, so we're going to do our curses. I'm going to do a little intro for y'all, and then we're going to get to it. And so the saying goes, some objects sparkle with history, legacy, or luxury, but others, well, they drag a trail of blood behind them. Today we're diving into two of the most famously cursed objects in history, one glittering with 45 carats of doom, the other built for speed and seemingly possessed by death itself. So before I dive in to all the beautiful things of the world, Chelsea's got a little hell on wheels story for you, one that starts with Hollywood royalty and ends in absolute tragedy and wreckage.
So I really had no idea how deep and wide this story goes. So, I think there are some stories that they resist clean explanations, and it's not really because they are missing facts, but it's because the facts line up almost too neatly, right? And you end up thinking, what are the odds? And this is the story of James Dean's Porsche 550 Spyder, known by the unsettling nickname Little Bastard. And it's just one of those really bizarre cases.
I've heard of this. And for full transparency, Chelsea did kind of tip me off that this was going to be the case she did because she had asked me if I'd heard of it. And I was like, I've heard of it, but I don't really know the what the like folklore behind it.
Yeah, I didn't either until we kind of stumbled upon this. I mean, apparently it's pretty wide known, and I'm sure like within maybe the car circles and the gearhead enthusiast maybe know more about this, but it's kind of really bizarre, right? Like every detail on its own can be explained, but when you take everything and form it together, it is just this really wildly bizarre and kind of tragic tale. And honestly, it's even troubled historians and collectors, and really anyone inclined to believe that some objects may carry more than just their weight, right? Like they might actually be something supernatural with these objects. So we will get into the story. And James Dean, hopefully you have heard of James Dean, right? Like he was this budding actor in the 50s and was just soaring to the top.
And he was fine.
Yeah. I mean, the guy was the original bad boy, right? Like he was incredibly famous. And he was really young, right? He was, I think, 24 when he passed away. But James Dean purchased this silver Porsche 550 Spyder, okay, on September 21st, 1955. And he was dead just 9 days later.
Ooh, I didn't know
So the
that.
car, yeah, it was a really short span. So the car itself was already notorious before the crash because it was built of lightweight aluminum and it had a completely open top and it sat just about 3 feet off of the ground. It was like 39 inches off the ground. Like from the bottom to the top of this car, right? Like it was super, super low to the ground. And the 550 Spyder was engineered for just speed, right? Like that's why it was built out of all aluminum and not safety. And Porsche produced only 90 of these cars.
Okay.
And really, the reports say that even minor collisions could have been fatal, right? I mean, you had to be extremely careful in these vehicles.
I mean, you're driving like a Coke can.
You really are. You're driving a aerodynamic Coke can. This was not a forgiving vehicle. And like I said, it magnified mistakes and it pushed this almost reckless lifestyle or this reckless aura that James Dean was really all about. That's what he had kind of built his reputation around. So Dean bought the car impulsively. He traded his previous Porsche and borrowed money against his future film earnings, which I think the grand total for this vehicle was $7,500 back in 1955. I mean, that was big money, right? And he had the name, quote, "little bastard," painted on the body. And it was a name that originally was hurled at him from the Warner Brother executive, Jack Warner. They had gotten into a fight and he referred to James Dean as, quote, "little bastard."
Ooh, so it was his petty Betty vehicle.
It was his petty Betty vehicle, exactly. And Dean decided to embrace the label. Well, once he bought this vehicle, friends immediately expressed concerns. There are documentation that several warned him explicitly that that car would kill him. Like he did not have the personality for this type of vehicle, right? So Alec Guinness later recalled Dean telling him that everyone he knew feared that the same outcome, right? They all were worried that he would hurt himself in this vehicle. And these warnings were not dismissed or forgotten. It was almost like Dean repeated them almost casually as if rehearsing a conclusion, right? Now, in the days leading up to the crash, unease followed Dean closely. Now, there was an actress named, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, Mila, maybe, Nurmi, and she was known as her role or the character Vampira, and she sent him this postcard depicting herself standing beside an open grave with the caption, quote, "wish you were here." Okay, now this was kind of an inside joke and it was intended as a joke, but it really unsettled James Dean to the point that he called her and was like, what's with the postcard? Like, I don't really find this funny. And she was like, it's all in good fun. You know, it's no big deal. Ha ha. And so he hangs up, but still really uneasy. Well, that was September 30th, 1955. And within hours, he is preparing for a drive to the northern part of California called Salinas, California, where he planned to attend or be a part of, enter into this car race. The Porsche was supposed to be towed, but at the last minute, Dean chose to drive it instead, and he wanted to put some highway miles on it, kind of break it in a little bit before he entered into this race.
Because I also heard, and again, I've heard of this, but it's been a long time and I'm a little rusty, but he was going to tow it, but didn't he have like, I don't know, a manager or an attorney or somebody who was like, you should try to drive it and get used to it before you race it?
Well, so it was actually his mechanic friend who was the passenger with him.
Oh, okay.
Rolf Wuthriek. And he was the one who was like, hey, why don't we get some miles on it before we get to the race?
Okay. Yeah.
and he was riding shotgun. Now, the two, they stopped for a milkshake, and as they were en route after getting a milkshake, they were actually ticketed for speeding. And they had two friends of theirs behind them, following them with the trailer that they were going to pull the Porsche back with, like after the
Mhm.
race. Now, it is getting to be that twilight time of day, and as dusk fell near Cholome, California, the Spyder approached an intersection where this 24-year-old guy, Donald Turnipseed, that's his last name, real last name, was in a Ford sedan, and he veered over to make a turn, and they hit nearly head on, right? And so the witnesses that were there describes the Porsche cartwheeling. That was the word that they used. Cartwheeling through the air before landing in a ditch, and it was crushed beyond recognition. James Dean was dead at the scene from massive injuries, but the passenger, his friend Rolf, was thrown from the car and survived with like a broken jaw and some other injuries. And then Turnipseed walked away with minor injuries and was not charged for the accident.
Wow.
Now, had the story ended there, it would remain a obviously tragic chapter in Hollywood history, but instead, the car's story continues. So the Spyder was declared a total loss and sent to a salvage yard where it was dismantled. And racing enthusiast William Esrich recovered the engine and installed it in his own Lotus racing car. The transmission and the suspension were given to fellow racer Troy Lee McHenry. 11 months later, both of the men had entered into a car race. They were race enthusiasts, and they were both in serious crashes at the same racing event. Eiserich, he survived, but McHenry did not. McHenry's car struck the only tree on the course, and it killed him instantly. Two drivers, one race, one shared mechanical origin, right? Like they both had pieces from James Dean's Porsche. From that point on, the Porsche was no longer just associated with James Dean's death. It had kind of developed a reputation. Now, the remaining frame came into possession of George Barris, and he was a prominent Hollywood custom car designer. He was actually the guy who invented the Batmobile, the original Batmobile, and then also the hearse from the Munsters, that show, the Munsters.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, Barris loaned the mangled chassis to the Los Angeles National Safety Council to use in this traveling road safety exhibit. So they traveled all over the US, and it was like, be careful when you're driving. You don't want to end up like James Dean, right? Like it was a whole PR production.
Yeah.
And during transport, the frame reportedly fell, killing a truck driver named George Barkis. At another display, the structure shifted and injured a bystander. Barris also sold 2 tires from the car that were somehow still intact, which were later rumored to have failed simultaneously. Like both of the tires exploded while on a vehicle after it had been placed. While some of Barris's later claims were exaggerated or unverified, these core incidences were real enough to keep that legend alive, right? So we kind of start getting into the weeds, like all stories do, right? On what's true, what's not. The car was damaged again in a storage fire, and only that one car was involved.
That is spooky.
It's so spooky. And then around 1960, it vanishes. Bailey completely vanishes. They have no idea where it is. It was there. It was in possession of whoever was, I think it was Barris was the last person, and then it was gone. No records, no paper trail, nothing, right? So that disappearance fueled, of course, decades of speculation. Now, some claimed that the car was hidden behind this false wall. Others believe it was buried in or it was buried or secretly destroyed. And the claim that it was hidden from this behind this false wall came from one of Barris's sons, who said that he vividly remembers being 6 years old and his dad and these two other guys walling this car into this kind of, fake pseudo wall. And he says that he was triggered by the memory looking at a scar one day on his hand. And he was like, oh gosh, I remember this scar. Like, I got this scar when I was 6, handling this car with my dad. Like this, this guy, he had cut himself on this mangled car. And that's when it was like, oh my gosh. So the people who were trying to find it at the time he had gotten in contact with them. Now, they went and looked for it. It wasn't there, but the building wasn't there anymore. And so that's where they were like, maybe it was just demolished with the rest of the building, right? So really only fragments of this vehicle, the original vehicle, endured. In 2020, a transaxle believed to have belonged to the Porsche resurfaced in Massachusetts after decades and a private handler. So Barris's wife, or the widow, after he passed away, she started auctioning off all of his stuff from his collection. And they believe that this transaxle was part of the original, or was the original transaxle from that original Porsche. In 2021, it sold at auction for $387,000, and it was purchased by, I'm going to see if you recognize this name, Bailey, Zach Baggins.
I don't know who that is.
He is the star of Ghost Hunters. That paranoid. Do you know who I'm talking about? Who's like, oh my gosh, guys, oh, this is really bad.
Yeah, totally.
So the Porsche's transaxle is currently displayed in Zach Baggins. It's called the Haunted Museum, and it's in Las Vegas, and it's a museum dedicated to haunted artifacts. So whether chosen for symbolism or marketing, the placement feels very fitting.
Yeah.
Now, my last piece, Bailey, and I think maybe the most unsettling detail, arrived quietly years later. So remember our friend Rolf? He was the passenger who survived. Yeah. He eventually returned to Germany and continued working in the automotive engineering, specifically for Porsche. Decades after the collision, he died in a car crash of his own. The circumstances were very, very similar. So the repetition, unfortunately, was not. Survival, it seemed, had only delayed the pattern. So was the car cursed? I don't know, right? It depends on how the question is framed, I guess. There's no evidence of anything supernatural attached to the Porsche, but what is evident is the convergence of risk, belief, and repetition.
Yeah.
So the Spyder was mechanically dangerous. It attracted thrill seekers. Its reputation influenced how it was handled, reused, and remembered, maybe, right? But each incident reinforced the narrative, and the narrative really kind of has shaped the perspective. So, I don't know.
2 thoughts. My first thought is, and this is just my brain, you guys, welcome. My first thought is, I got a job at a car dealership in my 20s, working in the business development center. And I remember saying Porsche, because we had a Porsche dealership. And the manager at the time came up to me and she's like, it's Porsche. And ever since then, I'm like, Porsche. So that's my first thought. My second thought is, James Dean was beautiful, and what a tragic loss of DNA that could have been passed down.
I know.
And number 3, dude, I am open-minded with stuff. I'm not like overly or underly skeptical or superstitious, but I am open-minded, and I'll just leave it at that.
I don't know. I don't believe in this stuff. However, we all know, Bailey and I know, that we had a Corvette. That was my very first car, was a 1979 Corvette, and it always broke down on me. literally, it was almost a like quarterly or sometimes like monthly occurrence. We're talking would not start in a parking lot, would not start for hours. A tow truck would pull up and then all of a sudden it would start. We're
Yeah.
talking it would overheat on the way home. And I always called it Old Dumpy, right? Because it was always breaking down. And Bailey was like, it's because you're not nice to it. You're not nice to that car and
That's
it senses
true.
it. And that's why you have so many issues with it, because you're not nice to it and you don't appreciate it. And when Bailey inherited the car, Bailey was like, never once did I have an issue, ever.
I think one time it didn't start in the Walmart parking lot. I was with Erin Dugas, and her dad had to drive up with a can of like ether spray to like get it going, and it started like right when he got there. That's literally the only time that we had a problem with it until Hurricane Katrina hit and ruined it, probably because of the volcano rocks that I stole from Hawaii. Talk about curses.
Yeah.
So
I don't know, but it did always mess up for me, and it did not ever have the track record with you that it had with me. So
it's my favorite car. I wish I could find it, but I think they had to like parts it out because it was rusted from being submerged for so long in that salt water. But it was beautiful. It was pearl white, and it had our license plate. It said Fine 79 on it.
yeah.
And it was the coolest. It was just the coolest. It's like my favorite memory growing up. Okay, so that's really tragic and sad. And this next one is interesting and tragic and sad, but just in a different way, right? And so I want to start off with the movie Titanic. Do you remember at the end when Rose, who's now ancient and so dramatic, and yeets that massive blue diamond into the ocean? Do you remember that?
I mean, everybody that is around the age of 40 to 37, everybody knows this.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so the old hag threw the diamond over, and everybody was just like, we were all stunned, right? We were so confused, and we were emotional damage. We were just like so upset. So here's the thing. The heart of the ocean, like in the Titanic, was not real, but there was, however, Chelsea, a real blue diamond. And honestly, throwing the real blue diamond into the sea would have been the most merciful decision in human history.
Was it like as big as the blue diamond in the Titanic?
There.
Oh, snap.
I will get there. So they called it the French blue, then later the Hope diamond. But history might remember it better as the gemstone that guillotined a king, shattered dynasties, and chewed up anyone foolish enough to wear it.
Pray tell.
Want to see the most cursed rock in the world? Just go to the Smithsonian, but don't get too close.
Okay, I'm so glad you said this, because I'm like, all I can think of is the Smithsonian. I was like, isn't that in the museum? Like,
Yes.
Isn't the Hope Diamond there? Like,
Yep.
I've seen it a couple of times, right? Same diamond.
Yes.
Same one.
45 and a half carats. So
That's a big rock.
it's got a badonk. Sorry, guys. Yeah.
It's like, dang, girl, how you get all of that in them jeans?
Yeah. How do you get all of that around your neck, dude? It's been stolen, flaunted, buried, lost, and mailed in a box. But everywhere it went, there was financial ruin, psychological torment, or death. So, this begins allegedly in the 1600s. There is a French gem dealer named Jean-Baptiste Tavernier. Tavernier is probably that. Tavernier. And he is said to have allegedly stolen a vivid blue diamond from the eye of a Hindu idol from a temple in India.
Have you
that's
seen
like Indiana Jones?
Yeah, I'm like, that's Indiana Jones right there.
I know.
Don't do it.
And according to legend, the priests cursed the stone in retaliation. And I mean, sure, if I was a priest in India and you yanked a sacred eye out of my god's face, I'd probably be pissed too, right? Well, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier later died a gruesome death. He was torn apart by wild dogs in Russia, supposedly. There's no proof, but the lore, it sticks. Before that happened, Tavernier sold the gem to King Louis XIV in 1668. And that is where the king had the diamond recut into a 67-carat jewel known as the French blue. So this thing was super massive in its original form, and it's been kind of like cut and shifted over the years.
Was King Louis XIV the real big one? Do we know?
The fat one?
Uh-huh.
I didn't know if you meant the real big one, like he was a big deal. I was like, I don't know how to answer that question.
No, like he was rotund, like a horse collapsed under him.
No, Chelsea, that was British monarchy. We're talking, because wasn't that King Henry?
Oh, that was King Henry. King Louis, that's France. Okay.
King Louis, yeah. The king had the diamond recut into a 67-carat jewel known as the French blue. He wore it occasionally and even had it set into elaborate ceremonial pieces, but it didn't stop with just this one royal. Nicolas Fouquet, which was Louis' superintendent of finances, reportedly wore the diamond once, and sometime roundabouts right after that was imprisoned for embezzlement. And he died in a dank, dark cell in 1680. Okay. The French blue was later inherited by King Louis XV, who commissioned it to be reset in 1749 as part of a royal emblem for the Order of the Golden Fleece. And by then, the diamond had already absorbed the blood of a few royals, but its body count is just getting started. It passed next to King Louis XVI and, who was his wife, Marie Antoinette.
Oh, Marie Antoinette.
Both King Louis and Marie Antoinette, as we know, famously guillotined during the French Revolution. Their associate, Princess Lamballe, was ripped to pieces by an angry mob and paraded through the streets. So by the late 1700s, the diamond had been worn by at least 3 people who were either executed or brutally murdered.
I'm sorry. I've heard of people being quartered, right, by horses where you tie.
I think that's probably what they mean.
I don't know, though. You know, mobs can get wild. They might have ripped her apart.
Well, they used to, anytime there was famous people, whether they were dead or alive, mobs would show up and, rip hair and clothing for, you know what I mean? Like when Bonnie and Clyde were killed and they were pulling them through the streets, they had to literally keep the mobs away because they were, literally pulling out pieces of their hair, ripping their clothes off to keep pieces of them. So people have been obsessed with true crime since the beginning of forever.
Right. Okay.
We just have more ethics around it now.
Sure.
Right. So, well, some of us do. Okay. In 1792, during the chaos of the revolution, the French blue was lost, stolen, vanished, and it vanished for decades. Okay, and this is where a lot of, kind of like the whole James Dean thing, there's a lot of hearsay, and some of it is verified and some of it is not, but it just adds to the lore of the curse, right? And apparently it was decades before it resurfaced in London. Now, at this point, it was in its final kind of form where it was cut down to the 45.5 carat diamond, and the argument is that it was to avoid detection. It had changed shape, but everybody was convinced, historians and everybody say it's the same diamond. And so once it went through a couple of changes, it was rechristened by a banker, I think, who ended up buying it, and his name was something Hope, and that was when it was rechristened the Hope Diamond. And so at that point, it started passing through handfuls of private collectors. At one point, a Dutch jeweler, Wilhelm Falls, who owned the Hope Diamond, was murdered by his own son, who then committed suicide. Another owner, Simon, I'm so sorry, everybody, it's a Greek name, Maioncharides, so sorry, a Greek merchant reportedly drove off a cliff, taking his entire family with him.
While in possession of this same diamond, right?
Yes.
All of this happened while the diamond was in their possession.
Or they had had it in their possession.
Okay. But they were somehow connected to this diamond.
Yes. So after the Greek merchant who drove his whole family off a cliff in his car, there was a Turkish sultan who briefly owned the gem and was deposed in a violent coup. There was an actress who borrowed the diamond for a photo shoot, and then she was later shot by a jealous lover. There was a prince who died in a boating accident, a Russian countess slain by revolutionaries, and an American heiress that we are going to get to. And so, I mean, we're just talking like lists and lists and lists of people. Okay. Whether these events were connected or not, I'm sure there's a lot of, sprinkle, like folklore sprinkle on top of it. But the diamond's reputation kind of solidified with this next person, and that was Evelyn Walsh McLean. And so Evelyn McLean was an heiress, okay? She was very wealthy, glamorous. She was a socialite and super obsessed with the thrill of owning something forbidden. In 1911, she bought the stone from Pierre Cartier, who had warned her of its reputation. Now, as the myth goes, or the story goes, Cartier knew what he was doing because Evelyn was like renowned for, I don't know how to say it other than liking that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Thinking it's a thrill. Okay. And so he played into that. And she's literally quoted as saying, let the curse come for me.
Oh.
Okay. And basically she believed that anything that was unlucky was lucky for her. So she was just kind of like, whatever, but leaned into it in like a fun, playful way. And she wore it everywhere. Parties, on the streets of DC. There were even like reports that she made a custom collar for her Great Dane so he could wear it too.
Oh yeah. My.
Right? But the problem is, it wasn't very long until the tragedies started to pile up for the McLean family. So first, her mother-in-law died. And then her 9-year-old son was hit by a car and killed. Her husband left her for another woman and then turned to the bottle drinking, died in an insane asylum.
Oh gosh, what a spiral.
Her daughter died of a drug overdose at 25. She lost her fortune, and she owned the Washington Post. She was forced to sell it and spiraled into kind of poverty and died alone and completely penniless.
Oh gosh, that's just sad.
Yeah. It was pretty awful. So after Evelyn's death, her estate sold the diamond to Harry Winston. And Winston was kind of like, I'm going to pass. And he is the one who ended up making the decision to donate it to the Smithsonian in 1958.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but here's the crazy thing, a sprinkle of crazy on top of it. He didn't ship it in a super fancy velvet case and hand deliver it with bodyguards. He straight up wrapped it in brown paper, stuffed it in a regular old box, and mailed it through the postal service.
To the Smithsonian?
Yes.
To whom it may concern.
There's a 45 carat diamond with the bloodiest history ever. Yeah.
Right. With generations upon generations of blood attached to it. Good luck.
Yeah. Yep. Now, this is what is the really crazy part. Apparently, the mailman, James G. Todd, was the one who had the honor of delivering this package through the postal service to the Smithsonian. And very soon after the delivery, Todd was in this crazy car crash and broke his leg. And after that, his whole house caught fire.
I mean, the guy's just trying to do his job. He doesn't even know it's in there. How rude of this diamond, right?
And then he suffered a serious head injury. So I know Chelsea's face right now. I know,
Y'all.
but it's literally like anybody who had anything to do with it. Now, of course, you have like Winston's wife. She was just like, don't be ridiculous. Like nothing ever happened to us. And even the guy, even Todd, James G. Todd, the one who delivered it, he was even kind of like, it's ridiculous. He was like, you know, if it was that cursed, then basically it being at the Smithsonian, then the whole public should have bad luck, basically.
Whatever. You can't handle it at the Smithsonian.
I know.
You can only look at it, and they probably have some like christened glass, like kind of like Annabelle, right? Where they have it in some lockbox. What if they have it in like the priest like blesses that room in all the Conjuring movies? You know what I'm talking about? Where they keep them all in that one room, and they always have to like bless it and stuff like that. It's probably like that. They probably like bless it weekly so that it doesn't leak out and get on the public.
And of course it's like, is this just like a whole confirmation bias thing, right? It's, you see what you see and it confirms what you see. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Is it kind of in the same vein of like when you become pregnant, you all of a sudden start seeing a ton of pregnant people? Is it one of those?
The
once
blue
it's
car effect or phenomenon.
blue car effect, right?
Sure.
I mean,
I don't know, but there's a lot there, and there's a lot of people who are super superstitious that believe absolutely that it's cursed. Now, just kind of like as a recap of some of the victims noted. So first you had Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, again, allegedly the guy who plucked it out of a Hindu god's face and started this whole trail of awful. He was allegedly torn apart by wild dogs. Then
that's
had
pretty bad. That's like Final Destination 18.
Yeah.
Which Final Destination are we on now? How many movies have they made now? But I mean, I feel like that's part of the next upcoming script, being torn apart by dogs.
Yeah, it would be terrible. Nicholas Fouquet in prison for life after wearing the diamond. Louis XIV died of gangrene after wearing it, and years of declining health, died of gangrene. And then you had Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. They were executed by guillotine. You had the Princess de Lamballe, so sorry guys, don't know, murdered at a mob riot. You had Wilhelm Falls, murdered by his own son, who the son then killed himself. Simon M., the Greek merchant who drove off a cliff with his family. Evelyn Walsh McLean, the heiress that had a lifetime of family deaths and ruin. And then you had the super random innocent postal worker, James Todd, who suffered a crash, lost his house in a fire, and had an injury after simply delivering it to the Smithsonian.
I don't know. It's one of those things, like when you start having all these coincidences, you do, I don't know, like you do kind of wonder.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe this is a super unpopular hot take, but these are also like very wealthy people who probably create a lot of their own tragedy and problems because of wealth.
Right. I
I'm
know.
not trying to, what is it? You have like ageism where it's like you're against people of certain ages. I'm not trying to be a, wealthism or,
right.
You know what I mean? I'm not,
right.
I'm just saying, like, when you have millions of dollars, or you are the king of France and your wife is putting on plays while the people starve because you're so separated from the woes of regular society.
Right.
It creates your own problems for you, is what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, if you are a millennial, then you would know the P. Diddy saying, "Mo money, mo problems."
Yeah. Well, as long as the Hope Diamond gleams behind its bulletproof glass at the Smithsonian, hopefully the curse will stay put.
Well, and it is kind of interesting that the Hope Diamond really is, think of all of the artifacts, all of the things that are in the museums there in
Uh-huh.
DC. And I feel like everybody is drawn to the Hope Diamond.
Well,
Like, there is
sure.
something about it. But, I mean, Bailey, there's a lot of amazing, amazing priceless stuff there, right?
Yeah.
But even I feel like people who aren't into diamonds or into gems are still drawn to it. I don't know. It does have
I
an
think
appeal
some
to
of
it.
it is because of the lore surrounding it. Even if you don't really think you're cognizant of that, it's the most famous diamond in history. And then, add in the Titanic, where it was kind of like loosely the inspiration for the heart of the ocean or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, I think some of that plays into it. But I was gonna cover King Tut's.
Yeah, I was going to say King Tut's.
Like, I almost did that one instead,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't for whatever reason. I just did
No,
this
I'm
one.
glad. I'm glad you didn't. I know. I kind of thought about like thinking of curses. That's kind of was my first thought was like, oh, I guess the King Tut. And it's so funny because I feel like that one in particular, right, is very much. I feel like everybody knows it, but nobody knows anything about it, right? Unless you know something about it. But like for most people, it's like, oh yeah, I've somehow heard about the King Tut curse.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell you anything about it. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, that's our case of the cursed objects, and I would just really love to hear you guys' thoughts on it. Like, do you believe that objects can be cursed? Do you believe in such a thing, or do you think it's all just a bunch of pish posh?
Bunch of hocus pocus. I don't know. I don't think I've ever really thought much of it. You know what I mean? Like that's not something that I think about. I'm not a superstitious person. In fact, Bailey and I growing up, our mom was very anti-superstitious. Like she was very adamant. Like, for example, I remember it might not have even been like my car. It might have been like mom's car. I can't remember now, but I remember that Millie, I think, our aunt had got this little like angel, I don't know, trinket thing. And I had put it on the rear view mirror, right? And it was dangling down. And I remember mom was like, you know that we don't believe in like that's not a real angel. That's really gonna like keep you safe on the road. And I was like, Mom, I know that. Like she was like, I just don't want you to get superstitious and think like if you hang something up on your rear view mirror that it's going to keep you safe because that's not how this stuff works. I don't know. I just remember she was really adamant about being anti-superstitious. Do you have any memories like that?
No, not specifically, but I do know that we were not a superstitious family. Like that just wasn't. Everything was very much like there's an explanation to everything.
Mm-hmm.
But also in the same breath, our family is very spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would kind of be like, oh, well, things happen, or, whether it be divine intervention or what have you. So
Yeah.
I think you almost kind of have to, if you accept one, you almost have to accept the other. You know what I mean?
I know. And that's, yeah, I like that you said that because it really does kind of broaden your horizon a little bit. Like, if you can accept one realm, can you accept other realms? I don't know. Like I said, I'm with Bailey. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on that.
Okay. Well, as always, you guys, thanks for hanging out with us for this super fun short side.
And as always, we will catch you on the wild side.
Bye, guys.
Later, Gators.
I love short sides.